Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping straight into a case that has understandably captured a lot of attention, the Idaho murders.
It really has.
We've pulled together the source material you shared, court documents, recent reports, to really unpack what's been happening, on the legal front.
That's right. And this is all about taking those specific sources and going a bit below the surface. Our goal is just to pull out the most important nuggets of information, see what the latest filings and reports might suggest about how things are moving, and look at the different perspectives being discussed, but strictly within the confines of the material you provided.
Right, sticking to the sources. Okay, let's unpack this then. One of the most recent significant pieces of info highlighted in the sources is a court document that surfaced in Pennsylvania.
Absolutely. This filing, according to the materials we reviewed, it specifically summons 5 individuals.
5 people. Okay.
Yeah, and it ordered them to appear for a hearing. I think it was set for June 30th.
And what does the source tell us about why these individuals are being compelled to appear in an out-of-state hearing like that?
Well, the documents talk about a process called show cause.
Show cause, okay.
Which basically means they need to explain to the court why they shouldn't be called to testify in the actual trial happening in Idaho later this summer. It's sort of a necessary legal step when you're trying to get testimony from people outside the state where the trial is.
Makes sense. And the source names these individuals, right? Who are they and how are they connected according to the material?
Okay, so first, there's Michelle Boulier. She was a former professor at DeSales University,
Right.
where the source notes Bryan Kohberger was studying for his criminal justice master's.
Okay.
And it's interesting because the source includes these quotes attributed to her from shortly after his arrest. She reportedly said she was shocked as shit.
Wow.
And added, "I don't believe it, but I get it." She also apparently called him a brilliant student back then. And the source specifically corrects a common misspelling, confirming the name as Michelle, not Marie, Boulier.
Shocked as shit and brilliant student. I mean, that's quite a striking contrast highlighted right there.
It really is.
Who else did the source mention being summoned?
Let's see. Ann Parm, described as an advisor at Kohberger School.
Okay.
There's also Jesse Harris, reportedly linked to a boxing gym. The source says the suspect trained there daily, citing info from like a 2015 job application.
A boxing gym. Interesting. And the others?
The documents also list 2 other individuals, Ralph Veo and Maggie Sanders.
Got it. Now, the source notes that it's not explicitly clear from the court documents themselves whether these 5 individuals are being called by the prosecution or the defense.
That's correct. Yeah, the document itself doesn't spell it out. However, the report we looked at leans towards them likely being defense witnesses.
And why is that? What's the reasoning given?
Well, the speculation seems based on the timing. It apparently follows the defense having filed an amended mitigation witness list with the court in Idaho.
Mitigation witness list.
Right. And that particular list, as noted in the source, remains sealed, under wraps.
So summoning people connected to his background, like professors or advisors, especially when you pair it with a sealed mitigation list, it could suggest the defense is exploring angles related to his character, maybe his history.
Exactly.
It gives you a little glimpse into potential strategies, doesn't it? Even if the specifics are sealed.
Precisely. It shows the breadth of information the defense might be trying to gather, even from across the country.
Okay. Before we dive further into the defense strategies the source discusses, maybe let's just briefly touch on the core of the case itself, just for context, as summarized in the materials you shared.
Sure. So according to the source, Bryan Kohberger faces charges for the murders of 4 students, Katie Salvis, Madison Mogans, Anakin, and Evan Chapin, back on November 13th, 2022.
Such a tragedy.
Described as just a horrific crime that deeply impacted, the community and the whole nation, really.
And the location and method, according to the source.
This all happened in a 3-story off-campus home in Moscow, Idaho. He's accused of fatally stabbing the victims.
Right.
And the source also highlights that 2 other roommates survived the attack. And one reportedly encountered the masked perpetrator moments after the attacks took place. Came face to face.
Chilling detail. Okay, so the materials provided point to some specific pieces of evidence that they frame as particularly significant in connecting Kohberger to the murders.
Yeah.
What are those key points?
Yeah, the report you shared specifically highlights 3 main elements. First, his DNA, found on a KBAR leather knife sheath discovered right there at the crime scene.
Okay, DNA on the sheath. That sounds major.
It's presented that way, yes.
Yeah.
Second, cell phone records. They reportedly show his phone in the vicinity of the student home multiple times in the months leading up to the murders.
Multiple times before.
And third, surveillance footage. It apparently captured a vehicle matching his car speeding away from the area around the time of the attacks.
So these three things, the DNA, the phone records, the car footage, when you look at them together, they're presented in the source as, well, highly compelling.
Yes, the source definitely frames these points as central to the prosecution's case, at least the case outlined publicly. They're presented as strong links between Kohberger and the scene.
And where was he arrested again?
He was apprehended December 30th, 2022, at his parents' home, which the source mentions is in the Poconos Mountains region of Pennsylvania, his childhood area.
Got it. And the potential penalty, if convicted, according to the source.
He faces the death penalty.
It's a death penalty. Okay.
Yeah, that is correct.
So that's kind of the picture that emerges from the prosecution side based on the evidence highlighted in the sources we have. But the defense isn't just standing still, right? The materials also detail their recent efforts, their claims.
Yeah.
Seeking a delay, pointing to an alternate suspect.
Right, exactly. The source suggests that the defense requesting a delay might be connected to the very evidence we just talked about. Perhaps to get more time to examine it, you know. And also possibly related to concerns about a potential violation of the existing gag order.
By law enforcement or the prosecution, maybe?
That's the suggestion mentioned, yes.
Okay. And this claim about an alternate suspect, this feels like where the narrative in the sources takes a sharp turn.
It really does. According to the reports, about 3 months before the scheduled trial date, specifically referenced around an April 9th hearing, Kohberger's legal team made a pretty significant claim.
Which was?
They stated they had identified an alternate suspect, someone who they believe could be the actual killer.
An alternate suspect. Okay, wow. And the source describes where this lead supposedly came from.
Yeah, this is quite a detail. The defense attorney reportedly stated that they found this lead in a, quote, buried tip.
Buried tip?
Hidden within the massive amount of data collected by police. It's described as being within 51 or 52 terabytes of documentation.
51 or 52 terabytes. That's an immense amount of data.
Huge.
Finding a single tip within that sounds like searching for a needle in a digital haystack.
Absolutely.
So what does the source say about the identity of this person? Or the evidence tying them to the crime? Is there anything?
And that's the crucial part the source notes is missing from the public record right now. The identity of this potential suspect, any specific details, any evidence linking them to the murders, it remains a mystery because the court filings detailing this claim and presumably the info about the alternate suspect are currently under seal.
Okay. So while the defense has formally raised this possibility of an alternate suspect, the specifics, the proof, the who, that's not available to the public based on these sources.
Correct. It's sealed.
What is the defense's broader stated plan for the trial, then, according to the source material, beyond just pointing fingers?
Well, the report indicates the defense intends to argue that Kohberger was framed.
Framed, okay.
Their plan, as stated in the source, involves claiming his DNA was planted at the crime scene by someone else.
Planted DNA.
And they also reportedly plan to argue that the crime itself must have been committed by two individuals.
Two people.
Using two separate weapons. That's the argument outlined.
Interesting. Now, the source does include a comment that some observers might see these defense arguments as, quote, just throwing enough shit at the wall.
Yes. That perspective is included in the material. It acknowledges that viewpoint might be out there. But the report also strongly emphasizes the fundamental legal principle, everyone is innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right. Crucially important.
And it contrasts this with some strong opinions expressed publicly, sometimes based on, let's face it, incomplete information. So as guides to your sources, our job is just to lay out the distinct claims and evidence points being discussed within the legal proceedings as reported in the material you've shared. No more, no less.
Absolutely. Just presenting what the sources say. So thinking about all this, the summonses for witnesses from Kohberger's past, the specific physical and digital evidence highlighted in the source, and then these defense counterclaims about an alternate suspect found in, terabytes of data, the framing theory. What does digging into these specifics mean for you, the listener? Why should you care about these details?
Well, I think understanding these different components gives you a much clearer picture of the legal process actually in action. It's not always neat. You see the efforts of the defense is making, summoning witnesses to maybe build mitigation arguments or explore alternate theories. You see the core pieces of evidence the prosecution is reportedly relying on and why the source frames them as significant.
And then you see the defense's specific formal claims being made in court, finding a lead in all that data, arguing for framing, suggesting multiple perpetrators. It's complex.
Right. And by focusing only on the details and claims presented in the source material, we can help you navigate past, maybe some of the speculation out there and understand the actual points of evidence and argument that are officially part of the case, even when some elements are debated or, like we said, kept confidential under seal.
It really highlights how a legal case isn't just about one set of facts, is it? It's more like a dynamic process where evidence is presented, it's challenged, and these alternative narratives are formally introduced.
Exactly. It's the adversarial system at work.
So this has been our deep dive into the recent developments in the Idaho murders case, pulling directly from the court documents and reports you shared with us. We've explored the significance of those new witness summonses from Pennsylvania.
The people from his past.
The specific evidence points highlighted as key in the source material. The DNA, the phone, the car.
Right, the core prosecution points mentioned.
And the defense's claims regarding an alternate suspect reportedly found in a buried tip, and their whole theory of framing.
Yeah, quite a set of developments.
So, with those crucial details about the alternate suspect and the specifics of the defense's theories kept under seal for now, while certain pieces of evidence are out there being discussed publicly, as noted in the source, maybe consider this.
How do the different claims and pieces of information presented in this case, just based on your sources, how do they challenge our understanding of events and maybe the pursuit of truth within the legal system itself?
What questions does this raise for you about how information is revealed, how it's contested, especially in such a high-stakes trial? Something to mull over.